seems to be claiming that there was a Russian tank that crushed a car which was carrying at least 3 civilians on board, including a minor. And let's get you also the key developments on the 17th day of the ongoing war that seems to be happening, where several cities that has been affected. Meanwhile, if we also take a look at the talks that seems to be happening, that has ended in a deadlock. The foreign ministers of both the countries met for the first time and it did not yield any result. Several cities that have been badly affected, they've been damaged. If we look at the residential areas, there are schools, there are maternity hospitals. Republic Media Network itself has been reporting from the bombing sites there. We are getting you detailed ground reports, whether it comes to both sides of the border, where humanitarian corridors that are being opened up for safe passage of the civilians there. But right now, we are looking at a situation. On your screens is a video that claims is what remains of the car, which actually what the Ukrainian media claims was carrying 3 people, civilians there. One of them was said to be a minor and was crushed by a Russian tank. Well, even as the city of Melitopol has witnessed heavy shelling from last few days, President Zelensky has accused the Russian forces of abducting the mayor of Melitopol after a video footage that was released. Here's what he had said.
March 11, 2021, Melitopol. This is a CCTV footage posted by an aide to Ukraine President Zelensky, claiming a group of armed men abducted the mayor of the city. Watch again. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of kidnapping the mayor, calling it a new stage of terror.
Вчора окупанти захопили в полон мера Мелітополя Івана Федорова. Громада міста вимагає звільнення його. І це дуже важливо. Я вдячний кожному мелітопольцю за цей спротив, за цю позицію. Окупанти повинні бачити, що вони чужі на нашій землі, на всій нашій землі України і ніколи не будуть прийняті. Впродовж ночі і сьогодні постійно говоримо з партнерами про цю ситуацію з нашим міським головою. Вимога проста – негайно звільнити його з полону.
Residents of Melitopol staged protests across the country, demanding the release of the mayor from the clutches of the Russian troops. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky praised residents for demanding his release after the surveillance video was released.
Втрати російських військ колосальні. Динаміка втрат окупантів на 17-й день вже така, що можна впевнено говорити, це найбільший удар по російській армії за десятки років. Вони ніде не втрачали більше за таку кількість днів. Від початку вторгнення 31 батальйонна тактична група ворога втратила боєздатність. Російські військові здаються в полон вже не просто поодинці, а цілими групами. Групами ж намагаються вийти з території України додому, в Росію.
Zelensky also spoke to French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz over the war with Russia, where he sought support to release the mayor of Melitopol. And while Ukraine maintains he was abducted by Russian troops, Russia is yet to respond to the claims. Agency Report, Republic TV.
So with the largest war reporting team on ground, Republic Media Network is the only global channel reporting from across 14 devastated cities of Ukraine. Let's get you more ground updates with my colleague there, Shavan Sen, who has been reporting since the last 3 weeks.
City administration, along with some of the military experts, they were basically planning of how the movement of the essential supplies is going to take place inside the city. Because remember, what has happened so far is that there is a 40-mile convoy of the Russian army, the armored vehicles, which has basically been stalled. And while the Ukrainian army, they've been able to hold fort in the capital city of Kyiv. That's also because they've been able to get their regular supply in terms of their logistics, in terms of the fact that their fuel, etc. All of that has been, they've been able to get it right on time, and that's the reason why perhaps you're looking at they were able to hold a fort at least in Kyiv. And this from down south, once you enter, that's the place where the supplies, how the supplies were basically being sent inside. But this was a surprise bombing that's actually taking place, if I may tell all our viewers right now, because most of the people that we have spoken to, they were hoping that this area will not be really touched upon. But what you're seeing right now is that right in the heart of a residential area. Take a look at on the left hand side. Take a look at the number of buildings that are here. On the other side, take a look what's happened. Here, civilians have been staying, and these civilian areas have been targeted. Take a look at this area, a playground, a sort of a playground, a small playground for kids. These areas have now been targeted by the Russians. So this is the 18th city that Republic Media Network has reached, and we are right now just at the tip of Kyiv, where the entire focus has been. The Russian army, as per the latest satellite imagery, they have basically moved in 20 kilometers. They're just about 20 kilometers from the center of Kyiv, and it is essentially being said that in the days to come, they perhaps would be trying to enter the city once again. Network has now reached Kyiv Oblast region, the very place which happens to be one of the key areas of the supply chain for the Ukrainian army, as well as the humanitarian aid that's been carried out. We are in a place called Serkwa, where you can see the bombing that actually took place. This is a completely residential area, and important to point out, a strategic position as far as Ukrainian army is concerned, because from this particular city, 50 miles from here is south of Kyiv, where the supply for the Ukrainian army takes place, and also this is the open line for the humanitarian aid to move inside the capital city. And that's the reason why many people, experts here, say that this was primarily the reason why this city, Serkwa, which is in the Kyiv Oblast region, was targeted. What you see right now is an area which was is a residential area, and roughly 2 bombs were basically dropped in this area where the bombing took place. And take a look at this particular building and the destruction that has been caused. While for the longest time this was seen as one of those cities that perhaps the Russians wouldn't really be touching upon, and more importantly, this was seen as a strategic location for them, for the Ukrainians. But it turns out that a sudden aerial bombardment has taken place in this area, leading to this kind of devastation. Take a look at it. This entire area, at least about 6 households that you can see right now, 6 households have been damaged in the aerial bombardment that took place. Take a look at this side of the building. This is how parts of this building has been reduced to rubble. And important to point out here is that the bombing actually took place in the morning when people were still living in the house, and that's the kind of destruction that's taken place. Roofs have been ripped off, window panes have been completely broken. This entire house, as you see on the left hand side, this house has been completely damaged. And take a look at the impact of the bombing that's taken place. Building after building in this entire area has been completely damaged. And what we have witnessed is that city after city that we've actually been going into, residential areas are being targeted. But why Serkwa becomes very, very crucial, because this is part of the Kyiv Oblast region. It is south of Kyiv, and all the supply, basically supplies in terms of the essential goods, are being sent from this very city, and it goes inside Kyiv. Important to point out here is that this, many would say, is yet another attempt that has now been made by the Russians so that they choke the supplies of the Ukrainian army. And
yes, right behind me, Republic showing you Russian army convoy. You can see Russian army convoy. There are the border areas. These are pictures which we are showing. You can see the V mark is there. Public has exclusively shown you these pictures where Russian army convoy could be clearly seen. The border Mazar area is just 45 kilometers from here, and we exclusively showed these pictures from the Belarus-Ukraine border.
the Russian offensive escalating with every minute, Ukrainian President Zelensky has proposed talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, Zelensky has asked for the Israeli leader to also mediate with the talks instead of Belarus, where currently those talks have been happening.
As the Russian troops close in on the capital of Ukraine, and as more nations try to step in to mediate in the all-out war between Russia and Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has now hinted that he is open for talks with the Russian president. Zelensky says he is ready for talks with Putin and has proposed an alternate location for the talks and not Belarus, the initial location of the negotiations.
By President Zelensky's administration that they are in control, while at the same time they've also put out this indication that they're willing to negotiate. The advisor just a short while back said that they're willing to negotiate with Russia. They're saying that all the other talk options, even with the foreign minister, is still open, but they are certainly not very happy with the fact that Belarus being the very place for those negotiations to take place, because they believe that Belarus has already aligned with Russia. They've given their territory to the Russian troops to carry out attacks on Ukraine, so they're not okay with the fact that these talks or these peace talks are going to take place in Belarus. They're looking at another location altogether, Jerusalem becoming one of the options open to the Zelensky administration for any sort of talks that are going to take place with Russia.
This comes on the backdrop of the multiple calls between the Israel Prime Minister and the leaders of Ukraine and Russia, even as the war rages on. Zelensky has proposed the Israel Prime Minister to act as an intermediary in the talks. Meanwhile, the Russian offensive continues in several parts of the country, and the Russian troops are just minutes away from the capital city of Kyiv, but Ukraine maintains all's well.
This is the place where we have seen the kind of shelling that's taken place, a lot of movement of the convoy from the Ukrainian side. And right now, the latest that has come in from the Ukraine's Ministry of Internal Affairs, they are still maintaining that Russians haven't been able to enter the center of Kyiv. They are still saying 20 kilometers away. In fact, the advisor to President Zelensky a short while back has also released a video trying to indicate that everything is in normal with a cup of coffee. The advisor of the president was walking on the streets of Kyiv. So there is an attempt that is being made right now by President Zelensky's administration that they are in control.
As the Russian troops knock on the doors of Kyiv, the Ukrainian side has offered to hold peace talks directly with the Russian president. Russia, however, is yet to respond. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
So in an exclusive interview with Republic, the former Indian envoy to Ukraine slammed the West, saying that Russia's war against Ukraine has become a profit-making game for a select few.
जितनी लंबी लड़ाई खींचेगी सबके लिए प्रॉब्लम है। सबसे पहले जो वहाँ लड़ाई के अंदर मरे जा रहे हैं इनोसेंट पीपल, उनके लिए बच्चे, बिल्डिंग्स, और ये सब चीज़ें अच्छी नहीं हैं, किसी दुनिया के लिए अच्छी नहीं है। जितनी जल्दी हो जाए वो अच्छा, लेकिन उसके लिए क्या किया जाए, आपका सवाल ये है। सबसे पहले दोनों तरफ से जितनी ईगोज हैं उनको फेंकिए, आगे आइए, सिंसियरली आगे आइए बातचीत करने के लिए डायरेक्टली। दूसरे जो इन्फ्लुएंसेस हैं, आउटसाइड इन्फ्लुएंसेस हैं, उनको अलग रखिए, क्योंकि उनके इंटरेस्ट में है कि जितना आगे बढ़ेगा उतना ही उनको फ़ायदा होगा। तो ये सबसे पहली चीज़ ये है कि ईगोज को हटाइए, आगे आइए, आउटसाइड इन्फ्लुएंस को हटाइए। दूसरा, आप ना देखिए कि अब आगे बढ़ना कैसे है, क्या करना है, ताकि दोबारा से इस प्रकार की कठिनाई ना आए, ताकि इस दुनिया में ये जो दूसरे आउटसाइड फोर्सेस गेम खेल रहे हैं वो नहीं कहिए। एक सवाल मैं शायद कंट्रोवर्शियल जवाब दूंगा उसका, कि मिलिट्री इंडस्ट्रियल कॉम्प्लेक्स का ये गेम भी हो सकता है, और उनके विचार में जितना आगे खींचेगा अच्छा रहेगा उनके लिए। उनका प्रोलिफरेशन होगा, पैसा आएगा उनके पास, नए नए वेपन्स बनाएंगे, टेस्टिंग भी हो जाएगी उनकी। तो इस गेम से भी हमको बताना चाहिए कि जितना दूर रहेंगे उतना अच्छा रहेगा।
सर इंडिया के लिए इसके आफ्टरमैथ और जो ट्रेमर्स है जो अभी भी फील हो रहे हैं इकोनॉमिक इम्पैक्ट्स के तौर पे फ्यूचर में और कैसे इस तरह
नहीं, ये तो सबसे ज़्यादा हमको इसी का डर है कि हमारा इसमें कुछ भी इंटरेस्ट नहीं है। हर नुकसान हमारे बहुत ही हैं। नुकसान इस वजह से भी हैं क्योंकि हमारी दोस्ती दोनों मुल्कों से है। सब जानते हैं रशिया के साथ हमारा अच्छे ताल्लुकात रहे हैं। रशिया हमारा दोस्त रहा है, हमारी मदद की है हर बारी। दूसरी तरफ यूक्रेन भी एक नया दोस्त बन रहा है। नई वहाँ पर नई चीज़ें आ रही हैं, नई एवेन्यूज़ आ रहे हैं जहाँ के हम दोनों मिलके अपने दोनों के लिए ठीक काम कर सकें। और सबसे ज़्यादा ये है कि हमारा जो खिंचाव है उनके वहाँ के नागरिकों की तरफ से है, जो कि हिंदुस्तान को बहुत अच्छी तरह से प्यार से देखते हैं। जहाँ भी कोई हिंदुस्तानी मिलेगा उनको प्यार से मिलेंगे। इसीलिए जो एक एडवाइस दी गई थी, जब आप भी हिंदुस्तानी स्टूडेंट बाहर जाए, एक हिंदुस्तान का मैप लेके जाइए। एंड मैं सच कह रहा हूँ कि अगर वो हिंदुस्तान का मैप देखेंगे तो दूर से आएंगे आपको मदद करने के लिए। तो गुडविल हमारे यहाँ दोनों तरफ से है। हमारा चाहते भी यही है कि दोनों तरफ से हो। हम ये चाहते हैं कि हमारा मुल्क इकोनॉमिकली और डाउनवर्ड ना जाए।
There are pictures of attacks and advances inside Ukraine and other cities too. 1/10 of the total refugees are in Poland. More than 15 lakh people have already reached Poland. There are now reactions from Sweden and Finland who have stood for Ukraine, and they are now trying to ally with the NATO forces, and this is what is not acceptable to Russia.
Let's get you more updates where some Ukrainian citizens also reached the city of Melbourne on Saturday and were seen reuniting with their relatives on their arrival.
Constant bombing, constant alarms. People constantly hiding out. In surrounding cities, the fighting and the shooting.
The unceasing violence in cities throughout Ukraine prompted yet more residents to join the 2.5 million who are estimated to already have left the country. Some Ukrainians have either decided to stay put or haven't yet been able to leave. Dozens of volunteers from around the world have traveled to the small Polish town of Medica, where at the border with Ukraine, to help refugees, mostly women and children, who are fleeing the violence. Some have also gone there to help with the pets and animals who are arriving with their owners or are being evacuated. The United Nations Human Rights Office says it has documented 549 civilian deaths and 957 injuries since the beginning of this conflict in Ukraine. The OHCHR acknowledged that its tally is likely to underestimate the real toll. And even as the Russia-Ukraine war continues, the Red Cross is providing life-saving aid to those in need. A video shows volunteers of the Belarusian Red Cross that have set up a tent house with electricity and hot water on the border with Ukraine for the refugees.
Threatens not just Ukraine's democracy, it threatens democracy and security across Europe. And by extension, when democracy is threatened anywhere, it threatens us all. And the ocean that separates us will not leave us untouched by this aggression. So I will say what I know we all say, and I will say over and over again. The United States stands firmly with the Ukrainian people in defense of the NATO alliance. And President Biden and I, then, with your help and leadership, chartered a new course for our nation's future. And we rebuilt relationships with our allies. And the results of that effort are clear as we stand together in this unified rebuke of Russia.
Let's get you more updates and visuals of devastation that is now coming across from Mariupol, where this is the third week of the conflict that seems to be taking place. And this is also what is being said by the military. While the capture of Mariupol in the east was said to be a priority for the Russian forces. Samiksha, if you can help us understand the latest pictures of devastation that are coming in from the city.
That's right, Amita. So we've accessed the latest visuals from Mariupol. Remember, on Saturday, the Russian troops bombarded this area in Mariupol. In fact, a mosque, a place near the mosque was shelled, which housed over 80 civilians. We do not yet know the number of casualties, but you can see the devastation there, the damage that has been wrought as a result of Russian shelling and bombardments. Remember, 1,500 people have died in Mariupol since the Russian invasion began in Ukraine. And now another shelling that has been reported in Mariupol city. Now remember, there have been evacuation, the humanitarian corridors have been announced in Mariupol as well, but nothing has transpired so far, and that's a result of the shelling and bombardments that continue unabated in this particular region of Mariupol as well. It was on Saturday, in fact yesterday, that we reported of this bombardment that happened in Mariupol near a mosque which housed over 80 civilians. You can see the Ukraine the Russian troops, beg your pardon, there after the bombardments and shelling that happened in Mariupol. What we're also being told is that Mariupol has been once again now a focus of intense shelling with an area of around a mosque that was sheltering more than 80 people. As I just mentioned, there's no immediate word as of now as to the number of casualties, but there's a lot of devastation that has been reported. Constant shelling and bombardments by the Russian troops there. So yes, that's the latest that we're learning. A lot of visuals and videos that we've accessed. Right. We do not yet know the number of casualties though. Back to you.
Well, that has been unconfirmed as of now. As Samiksha was pointing out, Mariupol, which is the Ukrainian port city, that has continued to endure one of the worst strikes, with the forces of Russia continuing with their shelling, especially in the downtown area. And then iconic mosque that is said to be the shelter places that it turned into a shelter place for many of those people who wanted to avoid explosions. And in those pictures, the devastation can be clearly seen of the city that has been under a siege for over a week, with people having no access to electricity, gas, or even water. Samiksha, thank you. In more updates, Western sanctions slapped on Russia in response to its military operation in Ukraine have delivered a major blow to the Russian economy and multinational corporations of all fields that have either suspended operations or pulled out of the country. Even as millions of women and children fled across Ukraine's border in the face of Russian aggression, concerns are growing over how to protect the most vulnerable refugees from being targeted by human traffickers or becoming victims of other forms of exploitation. Kyiv mayor has accused Russia of terrorism for targeting elected officials in Ukraine and insisted Moscow's forces would be kicked out of every inch of their land. This comes after a senior Ukrainian official shared a video which he says shows certain armed men carrying Ivan Fedorov, who is the mayor of the city of Melitopol. Chernihiv's governor has said that Ukraine's northeastern city was still facing heavy Russian shelling. In a video address, he said that Russian troops were said to be targeting civilian infrastructure where there is no and never been any military. And since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, fuel prices have risen dramatically across Europe with wide-ranging consequences. In Germany, the situation is threatening the very existence of transport and logistics industry. With the biggest war reporting team there on ground, Republic Media Network is the only global channel reporting from across 14 devastated cities in all of Ukraine. Let's get you more exclusive ground reports.
Здравствуйте. Можете сказать, как обстановка?
Отлично.
Да?
Лучше не видать.
Ага. Недавно украинский был здесь, да? Украинский был здесь, да? Контролировать. И сейчас это Донецк, Народная Республика и Руси.
По-английски не очень, я не понимаю.
Да, ага. Недавно украинский был здесь, да? Да, и как это было?
Наша Родина.
Да?
Наша Родина Россия! Да здравствует Россия, наши братья и сестры!
Ага.
Братья и сестры наши.
И...
Путин! Наш дорогой наш золотой президент.
Ага. Ага. И как это было, когда украинский был здесь? Как? Украинские войска был здесь, да?
Ну.
И как это было?
Как был? Стреляли нас. Обстреливали.
Украинский или кто?
Конечно. А кто?
Украинский стреляет.
Нет, я не взяла ему.
Ага. Украинский стреляет?
Конечно, украинские стреляли.
Они был контролировать здесь. Как они стреляют здесь?
Они тут спрятались у нас.
Да?
В карьерах сидели, обстреливали нас.
Ага.
С танков стреляли, из минометов обстреливали.
И почему они сделали это?
Ну, кто хотят землю нашу забрать, завоевать.
Они уже был контролировать здесь, да?
Как?
Это был украинский территорий, да?
Да, украинский.
И все равно они стреляют?
Стреляли в нас, да. Украинцы в нас стреляли.
Ого.
Да, очень было страшно, очень. Все по подвалам прятались, кто где прятались.
И сейчас это ДНР и Россия контролировать, да?
Россия теперь нас тут... Нас спасла Россия. Россия нас спасла. Российские войска.
Это
сюда, да.
Это хорошо?
Хорошо, конечно.
Ага.
Российские войска пришли и нас освободили. И нас освободили.
А украинцы чего только не натворили.
Они страшно тут. А что в Мариуполе там творится, говорят, сидят все по подвалам, не выпускают людей голодные, без воды, без света, без всего, без еды.
Ага.
Страшно, очень страшно. Наши дети там в Мариуполе, мы не можем увидеться с ними как. Потому что они стоят и не пускают их оттуда.
Украинские не пускают, да?
Окружают, все заминировали и не выпускают оттуда людей, детей.
Украинские войска сказал, украинский государство сказал, это Россия не пускает. Как вы могу сказать за это?
Да нет, как это Россия не пускает? Украинские не пускают. Они заминировали там в городе и не выпускают людей, не дают им коридор людей выпустить оттуда, с Мариуполя, чтобы они уехали.
Ага,
вот. Они прячутся, украинские эти нацисты, прячутся за нашими детьми, прячутся.
Как зовут?
Очень любят.
И где мы находимся сейчас?
Очень.
Где мы находимся сейчас?
Мы находимся где? Волновахский район. Волновахский район. Это село Анадоль наше, вот, Анадоль село. Да, ну у нас тут их много очень стояли. Очень. А потом, когда уже российские начали идти с Гранитного, с Карани, и начали их тут бить, украинских, и они стали текать тогда уже. Тут танки были.
Они стояли там.
Ну там стояли, в карьере стояли. В карьере стояли, и тут за посадкой стояли.
Ага.
Они вбили сюда. И разбомбили тут у нас очень. Но у нас один человек погиб. Осколки попали в него.
Кто стреляет это? Это украинский стреляет или кто?
Украинские стреляли, да. Осколки попали в него и погиб человек один у нас. Вот так вот. Очень много домов пострадали.
As war in Ukraine continues to scale new heights, Ukrainian civilians continue to flee the conflict zone.
The tanks are going to started to fire from the bridge in 10 a.m. So we got back our stuff and get away as far as we can because we was very afraid that someone or something can shoot us.
The Torwar Sports Center in Warsaw transformed into a shelter for those fleeing the war. Across Warsaw, people have mobilized to help, taking refugees into their homes, gathering donations and volunteering at reception centers. But the challenge is enormous. Tens of thousands of Ukrainians have crossed into neighboring countries in search for safety.
Thanks. Thanks very much for staying with us. My name is Amita Wadhwa. With the largest war reporting team, Republic Media Network is the only global channel reporting from across 14 devastated cities in all of Ukraine, where Russian forces have advanced closer to the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv from the north, west and the northeast. Ukraine President Zelensky has also said that Russia was sending new forces after suffering what he has said were its biggest losses in decades. Let's get you more exclusive ground reports.
I'm Patrick Lancaster, and right now we are in the city of Volnovakha, and the Donetsk People's Republic, or anti-Ukraine government forces, have announced that today is the first day this city is under complete control of their forces. Now we can see the devastation here in this town, these apartment buildings just destroyed, and if we come over here we can see more apartment buildings destroyed, and this amount of military equipment. We're told this was a Ukrainian tank that was left here by them, and just massive amounts of military equipment and just destroyed buildings. We're told this area here was used as a Ukrainian military position to fire on the positions and the city of Donetsk and other villages around it. So now we're going to try to find some locals that are still here, talk to them, find out what the real situation is here, and show you exactly what the people that are living this war have to say.
Может сказать, что произошло здесь?
А что произошло? Что украинцы все разбили для того, чтобы списать на ДНРовцев. Вот что здесь, вот что здесь. Понимаете? Сволочи уехали, все поразбивали, все поразрабили.
Украинские войска уехал и стреляют?
Украинские, когда отступали, они все поразбивали. Мне двери разбили, дверь закрытую. Я при открытой двери сплю, понимаешь? Вот в чем дело.
Ага.
И вот холодно, ни батареи, все холодное, все. Газа нет, света нет, воды нет, тепла нет. Так же 16 дней сижу вот так. Как?
Ага.
Вот так, мы же дети ДНРовцы, что они не наведут порядок? Сколько их можно ждать? Я не знаю. Где тут Красный Крест? Где он?
А я не знаю.
Ну ты ж не знаешь.
Скоро, наверное, будет.
А?
Скоро, наверное.
Скоро?
Да. Бабушка, смотрите.
А?
Я вам сейчас расскажу. Красный Крест и гуманитарная помощь уже сюда идет. Но и не могут подойти, потому что украинская армия ее разбивает. На дороге они не могут сюда пройти. Сейчас дорогу прочистят и к вам приедут. Вы
Так уже же отогнали эти...
А они стреляют издалека, вы же понимаете, что черти откуда. Сейчас
Я
чуть-чуть.
слышу, что гав.
Потерпите, пожалуйста, чуть-чуть.
Стекла побили.
Рядом с вами военные, вас в беду не дадут.
Я знаю.
Потерпите, пожалуйста, осталось совсем чуть-чуть, я вам честно говорю.
Вот чуть-чуть уходили, понедельника выглядят из-за угла и стреляют. Ну то, что это.
Скажите, пожалуйста, как вас зовут?
Меня зовут Ольга Дмитриевна, мне 86 лет. Я сама сижу в квартире 16 лет в голоде. Ну кушать то сосед принесет, то кипятка, то тарелку супа принесут. Ну нету ничего, ни газа, ни света, ни воды, ни тепла, батареи голодные. 16 дней сидим пока.
Скажите, пожалуйста, а надежда есть, что все будет хорошо, что помогут?
Очень надежда ждем, что будет хорошо. Мы были в Донецкой области, это наша область, и мы будем жить хорошо, мы только надеемся на ДНР.
Спасибо вам большое.
Да, мы только их и ждем, потому что с этих грабителей украинцев ничего не получается. Они не понимают жизни, они одни воры. Мы ждем только ДНР. И все.
А здесь были украинские военные?
Были, двери раскурачили, у меня дверь открытая на проход, кто хочет, тот и заходит. Вырвали замок с двери и все. Потом в подвале по имени Рома. Пойдите, скажите, Рома, тебя бабушка зовет. Пойдите вот тут вот в подвал на краю дома. Пойдите, скажите ему. Скажи, Рома, приди, тебя бабушка зовет. Он мне кипяток носит, но сегодня не приносил.
Спасибо большое.
Будьте здоровы. Дай Бог вам всем здоровья.
Можно вас добавить фотографию? city of Kyiv, where there has been a flurry of alerts that also continue to come in, but many of those scenes of devastation, as many of those apartments especially, that have been now left badly damaged.
Yes, right behind me, Republic showing you Russian army convoy. You can see Russian army convoy. They're at the border areas. These are pictures which we are showing. You can see the V mark is there. Republic has exclusively shown you these pictures where Russian army convoy could be clearly seen.